They tell me to slow down, but homie, I'm just living my life. Ain't gonna do what you think is right, cause that's stressing me out. They telling me they know.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Hamza.
This is David.
And we have David, and we have a special guest today. We have Yvonne. We love Yvonne. Yvonne is awesome and all that good stuff. So I'm really happy that we get to share her with the world on our podcast, because she is already pretty popular, has a very popular schedule, and we were able to fit her in, which we're actually going to include as a part of this podcast today, because she already has a reason of a spirit winking to her that I'd like to share. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Yvonne.
Hi, Hamza. Hi, David. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, you're more than welcome. Anytime that you get a chance, we'd love to have an ongoing conversation with you as time goes on. And
sure.
So before getting started, we like to talk about our door opening, or what was the incidents in our life that kind of led us on this path. Many people have similar stories that they were going in one direction and then they had a major event and now they're on this current tangent, if you will. So would you like to share that story with the team?
Sure. It's a tricky one to actually answer, because in some ways you could say you've been on this path since you were a little child, if you know what I mean. But then in other ways you can say, okay, they were trying to get me to do this work for 15 years, and finally this is the massive trigger that came at the end, you know. So probably I'd go from the massive trigger that got me to finally step into this work and own it as a path, if you know what I mean, and help me step away from the corporate world or a different life. I was in what I thought was my dream job, full-time job. I really loved it, but I think Spirit, God, the angels, however you want to call them, had a different plan for me, you know what I mean? I was doing readings, mediumship and psychic type readings on the weekends, and still trying to maintain a full-time job, which, as I know now, wasn't possible to achieve. But I was doing it, and because at the time my husband was unemployed, and I thought, well, this is kind of what you have to do. And more as I started to do the readings, people started telling me, well, why aren't you doing this full time? To name one, Hamza is one of them too. Excuse me. And other things started to happen to me. I placed a lot of faith in Archangel Michael, or Saint Michael, and I started to ask him why things felt like they were changing all around me. And I kind of invoked him, or I started to pray to him every night to say, what's going on? Please help me. I knew there was a change coming. Please help me. And pretty much took it from there. And with his help, I started to notice all the signs when it was time to go and when it was to leave my old life, which I did do kind of cold turkey. I resigned, and then I stepped into this full time. And 4.5 years later, we're not looking back. Everything looks great, and I understand I had to leave that life, but it definitely gave me lots of skills that I needed for working spiritually. So I'm very grateful to both of them, really.
We have similar stories in that when it took me a long time to leave corporate, and when I ultimately did, I was kind of like, I guess it was the joke was on me, right, because of the fear of not leaving. But then when I ultimately left, I was like, why didn't I leave sooner?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
It's something because you get stuck in security and thinking that you have to be on a certain path and you have to be going certain. But then all these things starting to happen around you that you're going, hold on, wait a second. Somebody else is in control here, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Exactly. So did you have you always seen spirit, Yvonne, and heard spirit? When did that start that you kind of knew that you had some kind of gifts or abilities?
great question. So I'm probably a little bit like maybe like you guys. I grew up in the 70s. I was a kid in the 70s, so everybody didn't know kind of what to call it back then. But just that I had problems sleeping at night. I thought I saw faces in my bedroom and outside the window, which just happened to be the second story, which is kind of strange, you know. And I was a classic kid who was afraid of leaving the closet open for what was going to come out of the closet. So, you know, if it wasn't for my mother Toonie looking at us as a kid, I think they would have just said, oh, she's just a fearful, afraid child. But I was definitely seeing a lot of stuff, and I was thankful to at least have my mother to be there and to be the kind of woman who was open to, like, maybe there's something else going on here, and who believed in ghosts and stuff anyway. So my dad was just a little bit more closed off. So I think it was starting there, but I just didn't know as a kid what you'd call it, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's good that, you know, you got some validation from your mother, you know, because, you know, when usually people, especially children, they're so capable and they can be experiencing all kinds of stuff, and, you know, as opposed to getting invalidated. What about, did you have any brothers or sisters?
I do. I have one brother, Paul, and I have one sister, Jean. I'm the eldest. I did have another sister who died as a young child named Lynn, so she would have been, theoretically, she would have been the eldest. But my brother is quite sensitive. My sister is not so much. She'd like to have a reading, but then want to go off and do her own thing, you know what I mean? So she goes from side to side, you know?
Yeah.
She still compartmentalizes, it sounds like.
Yeah, she does, because she's a mathematician, so I expect that, you know.
A mathematician, that's funny.
Yes, okay. She was there. She worked in actuarial and sciences, but my mother works full-time in this work now. She didn't until I was about 12 or 13, where she started looking into her own intuitiveness, psychic abilities, and her mother, Mary O'Brien. My mother's name is Bridget. My mother's mother, or my granny's name was Mary. And my granny was very, very intuitive. Like, she liked you or she didn't like you instantly, and people knew about my granny's sharp responses to knowing everything, you know what I mean? And my mother started having an awful lot of dreams. So I think for most people it starts with dreams, and they were just unusually clear and vivid, like you were walking in the story yourself, you know what I mean? And it kind of went from there. My mother read tarot cards and then left them behind, and then got a name for herself in similar to her mother's accuracy. You know what I mean? Oh, like, oh my God, she knows stuff. Either go see her or stay away from her, you know? So kind of very fortunate. I feel very blessed, you know.
And for those that are listening, you'll notice that I don't think it's just my ears that are picking up on it, but it's not the traditional American accent either.
True. I am from Ireland, yes. I'm from Dublin, a place called Clondalkin, which is about 5 miles outside Dublin. I came to the States in 1996, so I still have a sort of a Irish accent, but I was joking about this today. When I go home to Ireland, I'm American, and when I'm in America, I'm Irish. So it's kind of a joke, you know.
That's funny.
So if every time I go home, I'm the foreigner, but then in America, I'm the foreigner too. So I guess I'm just going to find a new place everywhere. There you go.
What brought you to Atlanta or to the United States?
Actually, nothing to do with spiritual stuff, but I think there was a plan, if you know what I mean, okay? And looking back now, because everybody can always look back in hindsight, when I went to college, my mother truly thought that I had something, and she wanted me to go to what's called the spiritualist churches in England, to really hone in to the things I was seeing, to understand the messages and try to help people. But I was a little bit too young, and I thought England was a great place to be in college, and had decided to have a good time instead. So I think the angels and God, etc., said, right now, if she ignored the last 4 years, we're not going to give her her next wish. And after I wanted to go to Australia and to travel around, and instead of that, my friend called from college who I was in and said he was going to America. Come to this meeting in Dublin and see if you can get a place too. And of course I knew I was doomed. I didn't really want to go, and I knew, oh, that's it. If I go, this is over. You know, I'm not going to Australia. So I went, and of course I got a job at a hotel in Atlanta, Georgia for the Olympics. And then, of course, as soon as everybody knew it was Olympics, you have to go. Forget about Australia. You have to go. And I was the only one who still wanted to go to Australia. So, like I said, I didn't follow their rules and do the spiritualist church thing in England. So now they were like taking over and saying, we're sending you to America. You're not going to Australia. When you go to America, you're going to find the Horizon Healing Center. So there you go. There was really no free will there.
That's funny. Wow, what a story.
It's funny because everyone that we speak with, we always ask at the end of free will versus destiny. And it always seems like it's more of a destiny once you get out of your own way.
Absolutely, yeah. And one time I did a meditation, and remember earlier at the beginning you asked me kind of what was the big turning point when I left the corporate world. I did a meditation a couple of years ago asking when, I don't know, I just figured out in the meditation to speak to my guides, I asked them when I was supposed to do this, and they told me I was 5 years off course. And I laughed at this. I was like, they let me go for 5 years, you know? And I asked, well, what 5 years? And they showed me my son as a baby. So apparently I was supposed to leave the old corporate world when my son was born. And then I chuckled at that because I understood why him, because he's very spiritual. I think he has a natural gift. And every time I do my readings, he seems to come in and help me in unusual ways. Like just the other day, there was a lady, my son walked into the bathroom to me the other morning, and he had my rosary beads around his neck, and he was very sad. And I was like, well, where did you get them? And he couldn't answer me. He was just all consoled in grief. And about 20, 25 minutes later, a lady sent me a note off Facebook saying she really needed to talk to me, and it was about her father moving her rosary beads in her drawer of her bedroom, and she hadn't heard from her father in 18 years. So I completely understood then why my son was linked to my past and him walking into the bathroom with the rosary beads. There you go.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
Well, so there's, I mean, so now you understand I have like about 1% free will, you know?
So being from Ireland, I just have to ask, in your experience when you were growing up, did you ever have any experiences with fairies or gnomes?
Not exactly. Actually, it's very interesting you bring up that topic because I more had frightening experiences with Ouija boards and stuff like that. I have a vivid memory from secondary school where I was in my first year where the principal called an assembly and said, talk to everybody in the entire secondary school is like high school in America. And talked to the entire school about nobody using a Ouija board because there was 3 girls who had just recently done that, and one of the girls would not be coming back to the school. He didn't say any further what happened to her, but that stood in my head. And then there was a couple of different parks that we used to play in as kids, and I found a lot of kind of satanic kind of stuff in some parks as a kid that frightened me, if you know what I mean. And I thought, well, these are all here to kind of tell me to be on the right side, if you know what I mean. But I was never ever harmed. But I remember that vividly after that, and I never ever went near a Ouija board and tried to keep people away from that. And I didn't have any experiences with fairies, but I certainly had an experience with another person in Ireland that we call the Banshee. Whether it's fable, truth, I definitely had a connection. There's a story in Ireland where if you hear the Banshee wailing, somebody's going to die. And I don't know the full history behind the Banshee, but she's supposed to be a wailing woman of long white hair who suffered and cries for those who are about to die if they're about to die alone. The whole thing is alone. You would hear this wailing noise come out of nowhere in the middle of the night. And I had it happen to me several times, and it was mid-teenagers, and I brought it up to my mother, and then a few days later I would hear somebody's death or something like that. So I thought, well, that's no coincidence. And it's such an awful sound, you kind of wouldn't forget it, if you know what I mean. So I never saw it, but just heard that very grieving, wailing, sad, stricken noise, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've one other story. In Ireland, we're very superstitious, Irish people are, and predominantly Catholic country. So a lot of old homes, you might see pictures of Mary or the baby Jesus. A lot of things, religious relics or things to keep people safe. We attune, like, for example, St. Michael or Archangel Michael would keep me safe. But we did have one particular holy picture in our house. We were growing up, my mother still lives in that house today. And we have this omen kind of thing in Ireland that if a holy picture falls off the wall, somebody's going to die. So I remember vividly, I think I was maybe 10 or 11. I just remember my small little body, so I can't remember the exact age I was. We were eating breakfast in the kitchen when we heard this crash to the floor. And the interesting thing about the holy pictures falling off the wall, they never break. They're always perfect, you know what I mean? And my mother froze still. So if you're around superstitious people, you'd understand when the superstition goes off, everybody stops, if you know what I mean. So I remember my mother freezing, going, oh my God, you know, what's happened? And then going out to the hall, and she already knew which picture it was, you know. And sure enough, it was on the ground. The thread that was hanging from was perfectly fine. It didn't break. Nothing broke on it. To this day, we have no idea how it got onto the ground. But it was about, I think, a half an hour or an hour later when my mum got the phone call that her dad had died. So those kind of things, you know. Those things really stick in a kid's head, you know.
So are there, just out of curiosity, are there any, you know, centers that are similar or like the Horizon Center in Ireland or in Dublin or anywhere over there?
Well, it's good that you bring up that question, because I only started bringing my work to Ireland about 3 years ago in the summertime, and I went to a spiritualist type church, if you will. So it wasn't per se like a healing center. I think it was called a spiritualist church, and where they do some classes. And then I tried searching. So I haven't really found a big place like a psychic institute or anything like that. But there was certainly a catalogue of a good amount of mediums and psychics. There wasn't any shortage, you know what I mean? And I'm doing work this coming summer in a healing type center that does a lot of acupuncture and Reiki and stuff like that, but they don't have any mediums per se. So I think that might be a nice fit for me, you know?
Yeah.
I love positioning. I mean, it's all about positioning. If you're the only one there, that totally makes sense. I do want to go back.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to go back to superstition for a second, because you still go back home to Ireland. You still have the you know, I can still pick it up in your vernacular and such. So you have that steep, rich history that you can always pull to. And it reminds me of the African American experience and how we traditionally have lost a lot of that over the centuries, because you know, there's a huge contingency of African Americans that are superstitious. So when you were talking about the Banshee, you know, at least in my family, we remember if a bird flew in your house, it would have that same type of dread, like, somebody's going to die soon, you know. in New Orleans and places in the Deep South, you still see some of those, a lot of superstition that still exists. But for the most part, a lot of people are cut off from that lineage, if you will.
Right. Yeah, I'm very fortunate that way. And I think you choose your parents. I think you choose where you're supposed to be born, what country you're supposed to live in, all your experiences in order to live the path that you're supposed to fulfill. So I think it was perfect that I was born under my mother. I actually have grown to understand why I have the father I have, and in the last 10 years, he's perfect too. Do you know what I mean? And I had everything that cultivated a spiritual experience in me since a very young child. And I'm very grateful to that because it does... It is important for my path, and that's why I was born there. However, America really kicked it off for me, you know. So America does have a good amount of spirituality, and I embrace all kinds of faiths as well. I think it's great to have all kinds of religions in the same place, you know. So superstition has a way of showing up in certain people, and they don't always recognize it as superstition. You know, the threes. I've had more people this year mention to me about deaths and threes. I didn't think they were superstitious, but the minute you mention deaths and threes, they were like, oh my God, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everybody dies in threes, you know. You know, and you know, definitely the bird thing as well. The bird hits the window. The bird flies in your house. The black crow. Everybody's afraid of black crows or blackbirds. Like, oh, the evil. If you know what I mean, get it away from me, you know. But they don't always necessarily recognize or label it as superstition. They just kind of say it, you know. And I've been fortunate to done a few readings for a few ladies from the Bayou kind of area as well, and they'd be, as you said, very deep rooted in spiritual ways as opposed to human ways. You know what I mean? The ways that are much older than any of us can really understand. You know.
Definitely. Now, with you, with people that aren't in this type of nomenclature, if you will, they group everything together, like you're a psychic, you're a medium, you're clairvoyant, but there's definitely differences. So if you talk more, and you're more, I think you have a greater capability in mediumship. So could you explain the difference between a psychic and a medium?
Sure, absolutely. And I think it's great that you brought up, you know, there's psychic, medium, healers, all kinds of things. I'm actually for saying you're one thing and not 10 things. You know, I think you should kind of focus on one thing. And anybody who comes to me for business, I say focus on one thing and you'll be success. Have too many lists of things and you're a man of nothing. Do you know what I mean? Okay. So I think you should actually focus on one area. Okay. I am primarily medium because So here's, and this is why I'm trying to say this in the easiest way I can, because you can approach it many different ways. Everybody is intuitive or psychic or has those kinds of abilities. The mediumship piece is just that extra little slot where you can actually be the medium or the conduit to give the message that the person who's crossed over wants to give to their human friend that they can't get through themselves. And generally they can't get it through themselves because the person here isn't recognizing what they're trying to say or filling in the dots, if you know what I mean. I think that I focus on mediumship because I have a good ability to see, number one. Clairvoyance means the ability to see, that I can see spirit, or I can see a ghost, or I can see a part of the essence of somebody that's still here or that wants to be seen. Claircognizance, you have 4 or 5 different clairs. The clairs are generally essentially linked to being psychic, okay? Clairvoyant, claircognizance, clairaudience, etc. No psychic or medium is brilliant in all of them. I happen to be very clear in seeing. I am challenged sometimes with hearing. So I have to make sure I'm very open so they can hear what they want to say, because sometimes in the readings it feels like we're playing charades sometimes because they know that I'm not hearing them correctly, you know. But I can see them very clearly. And if they do a movie story in front of me, I can follow along, you know. So I just have that extra ability to be able to decipher what's going on and get the message to the person who's sitting there. And that's what I like to focus on, you know.
In our second podcast that we had, we're on I think 13 now or so. But in our second podcast, we're making our way out there. Starting to get a handle on this as it goes forth. But in our second podcast, our topic was on God winks, and there's no accidents or coincidences. And you mentioned that sometimes that it's hard for people to get a message, but there are other times where the family member or ancestor or something is persistent, and they won't stop until they get your attention. And we were going to talk last week, but you had gotten someone that was very persistent in getting in touch with you. So I'd like for you to share that story, if you will.
Oh, my God, yeah. Are you ready for this? Now, this will really take you back. And I cried for days after this. I just couldn't fathom the magnitude of what happened. And it's amazing. You guys, David and Hamza, were literally a part of that. We tried to podcast last week, and it was scheduled, and I was scheduled to do a reading over the telephone before that. And it was my first reading back after taking a vacation to Yellowstone and Glacier National Park. The only reason I'm mentioning that is because it's actually all linked. So we started the reading. Everything was fine, going great. 2 minutes before I was supposed to. So I went over time on the reading, but just 2 minutes before I was supposed to get onto the podcast, this young man showed up, and I kind of recognized him. And I was like, well, maybe they're trying to show me a parallel. This couldn't be the person that I know, you know what I mean, coming into this late. I didn't understand the correlation, but when you do mediumship, you realize you have to leave your head behind. This has got nothing to do with your brain, you know, because we just can't understand their ways, okay? So we had started talking about what was a murder, and I was like, I think this is my case. And we were 2 minutes in, and he winked at me. And then I said to the young lady, I have to go. I've got the scheduled podcast. And I've never had a spirit crossover wink at me before. And I thought, I didn't know what to make of it, but I thought, well, this is kind of funny. I felt really good. He was giving me this amazing feeling, but he winked at me. Then I said, I have to go. And I was like, oh, my God, why did he come in at the last minute? And I called you guys, and I was having tremendous trouble with the actual getting my phone to work, etc. And we ended up kind of deciding, okay, there's something wrong. Now is not the time. So we decided to reschedule. And I said, you know what, I've got the feeling I need to go back to the lady I was just talking with. Because if this is the guy who I think it is, this is going to just, I'm stunned, if you know what I mean. So I go back and we continue on the reading for another like 45 minutes. And we go all into this murder that I'm so much in a trance, I don't completely really realize what's going on. And she doesn't verify what I think it is, but I know that it's a good reading. So we end the reading, I give her all the details, and that's that. After that, I got so fixated that thinking that is this the case I worked on 2 years ago that stopped suddenly for me, that I got very upset because it didn't go where I needed it to go. I thought it needed to go, okay, because there were so many similarities, right? And it was the same name. It was like could it be? And I went and pulled up the case, and I started crying. And I couldn't control my crying because this is a boy I'm talking about. It's a child. It's not an adult, you know. And I'll leave the names out of it for the sake of where it's got to go, do you know what I mean? But I was very, very upset. And I went to bed that night just exhausted from the energy of pulling all this in, etc. And the next morning it was kind of bugging me that I needed to explain one part of the reading to her. And I emailed her. And I went and I said, this section I think is to do with my case. And I still wasn't 100% sure this was my case. So I said, this may not be yours. And I verified, I gave her the full name of my case that I'd worked on actually with our group, Hamza. With 4 or 5 ladies. It was our second case, and we did a report to the sheriff's office. I had some phenomenal dreams about him, and I was convinced it was going to get solved, but then it stopped. We handed in the report, and everything stopped. I emailed her the next morning telling her the name of the person. It was 10 minutes later, and she said to me, we have the same person. And I broke down in tears. And then, you know, but that's all she said. And then I had to go to my clients. And then that afternoon, I had to, I was like, okay, where does she come into the picture? Do you know what I mean? How does she know this person? And she verified by that evening that she was the best friend of this kid. And that she knew everything that I had said. And we both broke down in tears. And after that, and then she said, I want to help to get to the family. And I had tried, our group had tried to get to the family, but we got no response. And this was 2 years ago where it stopped dead in its tracks, okay? And somehow 2 years later, this is the wife, her husband came to me a month ago, and he begged me to do a reading for his wife. And I scheduled her for the first night back after I'd spent 2 weeks in the national parks thinking about the particular case of that boy who was connected to parks, and the killer was all connected to parks. And here I am going, oh, my God, this is why I went to the parks. This is why her husband found me. I have still no idea how he found me to this day. And now she's determined to help and to get it where it's supposed to go. But, you see, this boy knew this when he winked at me. And I couldn't comprehend half of what he knew because my logical brain is just not able to understand that they know everything and that everything is in divine timing. And now I'm getting our group back together to see where we can take this now and see if it can go the final lap of the race now and finally get solved.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, can you post it on that if you want me to I wanted to talk a little bit about that because you know, as a medium and people seek your services, but you also had outreach to the law enforcement. So how did that come about originally?
Well, honestly, I have to thank my father for this for when I was a kid because my father is a lot quieter than my mother, and he's not, as a kid, he wasn't the kind of father that was easy to get to know, if you know what I mean. But as a kid, he had this unusual interest in crime magazines. So we used to go on holidays to Spain every summer, and my father introduced me to true crime magazines that I used to read on the beach in Spain every summer. And that's where I learned about serial killers and all that sort of stuff. I know it sounds quite morbid, but he played a part in my interest in why people do what they do and why they do it, you know what I mean? And I was always fascinated in tracking killers and trying to figure out what their next step was and why. So it was a natural occurrence for me after I started teaching classes I started a Road to Mediumship 1 and a Road to Mediumship 2. And at the end of 2, which is 6 weeks program, we look into a missing persons, because I started seeing missing persons coming to me everywhere on bottle cans, on everything. I was like, okay, I get it. You're putting them all on my face. And my neighbor across the street from me, his boyfriend just happened to be a detective, and I just happened to give him some information. He asked me, well, how did you know that? We never released that to the public, you know. So I knew there was something there. And then I started to have a decent amount of dreams of people who crossed over and who were kind of not stuck, but unhappy the way things were left for the sake of their families, if you know what I mean. So I naturally said, okay, I need to give back, and there's an awful lot of sadness in the world due to young and old people being taken from this earth, not being there, doing it all. And the group that went to Road to Mediumship 2 had a natural interest in pursuing cold cases, and they said at the end of it, let's take a look at this. And we found that some of the sheriff's departments were more open than we thought to it, and each member of the group would just find something and would put it in front of the group, and the group would say, for some reason, this one is it, if you know what I mean. And we started doing remote meditations, from looking at things and going to sites and sending reports to sheriff's departments, police departments, whatever way we could help it on a volunteer type basis, because, again, this has to be kind of our give back, you know. And this was the lady I just met. This was the very second case that we handed over, and all of us were kind of disappointed that it didn't go any further, but now we know possibly we get a new lease of life in it now.
Absolutely. That's a great story.
Yeah, it is.
So nothing's really, it's all divine timing, really. No, I would have never imagined the way be made for her to find me. And if I was to tell you all the details of the case, you'd be floored as to how connected this young lady is to it, you know. And that's why I couldn't stop crying. I was like, because you become good friends with these spirits that have crossed over. You become like they're your own brothers and sisters. And sometimes it's hard to let them go and put them in the right hands and know, it will get taken care of. And it took me a while to let go of that one. And it's been about a year where I'd kind of, now and then he would jump back into my head, but that was about it. It came full force on that night, and I must have cried for 3 days straight. I just couldn't get over it, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. I'm telling you, when there's good in the pot, only more good comes of it, you know.
Yeah. So, Yvonne, you know, for as long as you've been doing readings and doing your work, you've, helped people out and, different and profound ways. So, those people could talk about how it affected them and whatnot. But on your end, what do you get out of it? What do you enjoy the most about the type of work that you do?
Wow. Okay, so first of all, I enjoy the tremendous balance that it's brought back into my life, because it's forcing me to go out and walk. I have to go into nature practically every day, and I'm getting a lot of peace out of doing that, while I'm getting clarity and getting information while I'm going out to walk. It's helping my body. I feel an awful lot younger. The second thing, I have to regularly do meditation, and meditation just makes you feel great. I can look at things totally different now. From the amount of things I've seen, I don't take things as hard as I might if I had not understood. And I'm continually learning. I think there's a ton more for me to see, if you know what I mean, and understand, you know. But I certainly don't sweat the small stuff anymore at all. And I think I've lost about 10 years in stress, you know. Then it's certainly now, for people to understand, it's certainly something you can't read 40 hours a week. It just doesn't work that way. The very maximum you're going to do is 15 hours. And if I push it to 20, you know, I'll certainly be sleeping 10 to 12-hour nights, you know. So I know there's a border. I can only see 3 people a day now. And if it goes any further than that, you know, the quality of what I can receive will go downhill, and it's just not worth it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it forces you to balance, you know. It forces you to do good practices, keep yourself healthy as well, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, of all the readings you've done in your lifetime, is there anyone that just kind of stands out for whatever reason that you just never will forget?
Wow, there are a few, and some of the best ones I have to be honest with you as well, so this may seem strange. Some of the best readings I've done, I've not charged a penny for. It's been, and what happens is that it comes back to me tenfold. I totally understand I'm going to be protected and stuff like that. I definitely helped out a lady one time who couldn't pay for her electric bill. So there's no way I'm going to charge her for the reading, you know. I think the information that her mother gave her while I was standing at the sink in my kitchen, it was only 20 minutes, but I think that could have been a matter of life and death. So I remember that had a really ripple effect on me for months and months afterwards. I also remember dealing with another murder case, which was a double murder, which was particularly gruesome. But I remember the wonderful detective we worked with and how amazing he was. But I think the pinnacle one would be my brother's best friend who committed suicide. But because I knew him since I was about 6 or 7 years of age, and it was about 2 years last summer I finally connected with his sister. And the way things went down again is it would just make you cause to think that, again, they're pulling my strings. I'm not pulling their strings. Do you know what I mean? I had always said Sean was his name, my brother's best friend, and I always thought he was funny as a kid. And I just knew there was something about him that we had more connected in our path than I probably would have known, you know. And that week in Ireland, when I did the reading for his sister, literally I got this message from Sean standing in my sister's house going, you have to tell Paul to text Kira today. It has to be today, okay? And I was like, okay, my brother's got to play along with this. Let's see how this goes, you know. So he was initially hesitant, and he was trying to get me to write the text for him. But I said, just tell her your sister's in town. She'd really like to connect you with Sean. He's got lots to say. Everything's going to be all right. And he was very nervous about it, but, you know, he was like, oh, she thinks I'm nuts or whatever, because he hadn't seen her in a while, too. She texted back within about 10 or 15 minutes saying that it was the worst day of her life, and that she just heard the best news ever, and when can we do it? And I said she's going to say Friday, and she said Friday, and Friday we're over at her house. And she put this piece of paper on her dining room table. I couldn't see it because the dining table was far away. On it she had a list about 22 to 25 questions for her brother. Her brother answered them in order.
Wow.
And we were flabbergasted. And she had her husband there on the couch taking all the notes as well as recording. The poor guy was like in bits by the end of it with all the writing, you know. But he came, I will never forget that time in her house. And he just put her mind at rest. And ever since that day, on the way over, my brother drove me over to her house. And we kept hearing Justin Timberlake's song. You know, I've got that feeling. Just got a feeling right on, and it just came out. And I said to Paul, there's something special about this song. And I know Sean is trying to tell me about this song. So I said, remember it. And my brother just didn't want to come into the house. He dropped me and left, you know. I think he was still in the middle on the fence, kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to lose my sister and my best friend's sister as well in this whole event. And in the middle of the reading, in comes Justin Timberlake's song, I've Got That Feeling. And I said, Sean keeps saying to you, every time you feel down about him, you're to put that song on. She said, that is the only song that makes me feel happy. To this day, every time I have a reading that's connected to a suicide, I hear that song on the radio going to the reading. And some days I've heard it on 3-4 stations all at the same time. In my car, you'd swear I was in some kind of UFO or something. I was freaking out. And I go, I get it. We're doing suicide this morning, you know. So they will formalize this kind of relationship with you that certain codes mean certain things, you know. So I don't think I'll ever forget Sean Fogarty. Never forget it. And he was really, really close friend to the family. We all cried to death. He was 38 when it happened, and it'll always be in that night will always be in my head.
Absolutely, that's a really great story. Well, you have a ton of great stories. We got to have you on.
Oh, yes, like there's so many of them. I have 15 journals alone in my drawer. I'm looking at the drawer full of journals. I highly recommend to everybody that if you have vivid dreams and stuff, write them down. The amount of stuff that comes out months later, I go, oh my God, there it is, you know. But there's just so much, and if you don't write it down, nobody will believe you unless you produce a journal, you know.
Yes. Wow. So over this weekend, Yvonne, you had a class at Phoenix and Dragon talking about changing your career in life with Archangel Michael. And I wanted to let you talk a little bit about the class because for people that are listening to this, they obviously missed that class, but I know you're going to have some more when you come back from Ireland. Before you go into it, what made you choose Archangel Michael over any of the other angels?
Well, one very important reason, when I was a kid, my mom gave me a prayer from St. Michael or Archangel Michael, and so it was a prayer for protection because she was worried about me sitting up all night, not sleeping, being scared, you know. So she gave me this little prayer, and I still have it today, although it looks like it's 300 years old, you know. It's in bits, but I kind of formalized a relationship with him as a kid, as in to protect me, as in to really help me. So when I was noticing all this change was coming for me, just before I left the corporate world, I started asking him for help. And he showed me how to kind of get back onto my path and how to leave my old life and enter my new one. And all thanks to him, I started the workshop because I was convinced, well, if I can do it, everybody else can, you know. And so we need to turn this into a workshop. And then when I was writing the workshop on June 13th, strange enough, today is June 13th? It is. Oh, my God. Okay, this is freaky. So on June 13th, 2015, I was sitting in this very basement writing the workshop, and I heard, and again, hearing from me sometimes can be tricky. I heard as loud as day in the room, because you believed in me, I came to you. So I, of course, burst into tears. And it's not just because I'm a weepy woman at this stage. I just think when you hear anything like that, your whole body just breaks down, you know. And I was like, oh, my God, I think you just spoke to me. And he said, because you believed in me, I came to you. So that I ended up putting in the workshop and creating that as the bones of the workshop. that if you believe in St. Michael, Archangel Michael, he'll help you get on your life path. He'll help you get in the right direction, and he'll protect you through it. And that's why he was so great, because you need the protection knowing you're going in the right direction, and you need to have some blind faith at the same time. So as long as you have some kind of angelic support, then I think you're okay, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
So
and he's cobalt blue for me. So anytime I see somebody walking into a reading with me with a cobalt blue blouse or shirt, I always know this is going to be about path or changing their career, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So watch out for that color now.
I think it also just shows grace. I mean, when you were talking to them and they were saying, like, you're 5 years off the path, it wasn't like you were being chastised. I mean, they were, we're going to get her, I would say come hell or high water, but we're going to find a way to get her back on the path, but 5 years means nothing in other dimensions, you know.
Right.
So the love is still going to be there.
Yeah, and then it was very, they put, at that point, I think they were saying, now it's time, because they put so many things in front of me that I just couldn't ignore it, you know. Things that the job, I loved the job I was in the old career, but everything, absolutely everything changed around me. The management changed, the philosophy of organization, people who I loved working with were shifted and moved off in different directions. Things that I would have deep-rooted problems with started to show up. Everything was there to tell me that there's an avalanche coming, you know? So can't you feel it? Yeah, I can feel it. I feel like I'm in the eye of the storm. What is going on, you know? So I think at that point they were saying, okay, now it's time to go, but we're going to give you 100 to 150 reasons why, you know?
That's funny. Yeah. So, Yvonne, you said you've been here since 1996.
Yeah.
So, do you just plan on, you're going to stay, that's a pretty good amount of time, you're going to stay in the United States for the rest of your days, or could you foresee yourself moving back to Ireland at some point?
David, I have no idea. See, that's a brilliant question you asked me. Since I moved fully into my path, I kind of live one day at a time. But I know when change is coming, like I was saying about the avalanche earlier, okay? And I just go with the flow now, okay? So when something good is happening in a different direction, like last summer I went to Ireland and it was the best summer I had, and I thought, oh God, maybe I might stay here a bit longer, you know? So that was kind of hinting at me that you need to look at different shores, or we want you to move now a little bit out of your comfort zone, now move to the kind of the next level, you know? But it's very, very important when the feeling comes to act on it, okay? So I was like, yeah, I'm going to go back next year and I'm going to do this, this, and this. Because last year is when I really found that center. And the lady's like, oh, you have the room whenever you like it. And she just happened to have a mail serve of like 4,000 people. And we did up a really quick flyer the week before. I'd already gotten to Ireland. The week before it was due to start, she sent it out to our 4,000 plus people. And the first class we had 8. By the last class we had 20-something. So, do you know what I mean? So it just blossomed. You don't have to be prepared for these things at all. I went to Ireland not knowing what was come on the doorstep. But it just flowered right in front of me.
Yeah.
So I'm open for any and all direction, you know?
Yeah.
Plus, I think in 2017, it's easier, right? I mean, you have a website, and you mentioned driving to a reading, but you can do readings over the phone. You can do readings over the web.
Yep. Yeah, so, it's been a big growth year for me. And I appreciate everything that's coming my direction, and the readings are getting bigger and more and more enlightening. So who knows what's next, if you know what I mean. I'm still trying to stay grounded, if you know what I mean, and humble. And I'm very, very grateful because the first year I stepped into this, I had nothing. But Archangel Michael told me to trust that everything would be okay. And it was a few months in, I was told, I had a very vivid dream where I don't know who the person was because I still to this day don't know who they were, but this person told me in a dream that to enjoy the time with your kids now because it won't be long before you're really busy. And sure were they right. They were absolutely right. So while I thought, oh my God, I just left a full-time job and I'm going down to 2 or 3 hours a week, it was actually God sent, and it was more time to get yourself together, think about which direction. None of it was spent or misspent, if you know what I mean. It was perfect time. I had the greatest time with my family as well as figuring things out and slowly going in the direction that I was supposed to go, you know. So don't push anything anymore, you know.
Yeah. Cool. So when are you heading off to Ireland? How long before you leave?
I'm leaving on Sunday. Yay.
Okay.
Sunday. Yeah. And, you know, I have a connection with the healing center that I'm going to, but again, I don't have anything already put out there, but I know everything's going to be fine, you know. And I just, you know, last year was pretty amazing. And that's why I say to people, the strangest thing can produce the greatest fruit or bear the greatest fruit. One day my mother said, let's go, and this, I have my mother to thank for this. She said, let's go and buy your daughter a pair of shoes. And I was thinking, well, I don't need to buy her a pair of shoes. We just got her, you know. So we go over to the shoe shop in a different town, and I'm sitting there, and there's nobody else in the shoe shop, just me, my mother, and these two ladies. And I get this overwhelming urge to give her my business card. And she's like, oh, my God, I was trying to find a medium. There's no medium around here. What? Can we come and see it? So it's a shoe shop, you know. And I only have, and it was my mother who reminded me, bring some business cards with you. And I was like, yeah, just got here, you know, kind of thing. So, so they were in the back pocket of my jeans. I brought them with me. Those two ladies gave me more business over the summer. They just kept coming from those ladies. We passed on to another friend and another friend, this friend. Then we had this group of ladies, and they were coming and coming and coming. Like I said, it was the shoe shop that kept giving. You know what I mean? So you just never know where the fruit is going to bear. And it was. That was meant to be done. And I still thank them to this day. I still laugh over like all that they gave me, you know. Yeah,
it's great to know. Sometimes it's nice to, not know where it's going to come from and be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's like I know a lot of people have read Wayne Dyer, etc. But it's like when you're living in the moment, right? You're just happy and peaceful. All this stuff starts coming to you, right? You're not stressed. You're not worried about security. You're just saying, okay, let me stand still for a second. Let me look outside and appreciate the trees, the birds, all the beautiful things around me, and they're just happy. The squirrel just lives in a tree. He doesn't want a big house on the a mansion on the hill, you know? And you're like, okay, let me just be like them. And let me say there's enough in the world for everybody, and just be happy within yourself. And then all this abundance keeps coming around, you know. It's just amazing. You really would be surprised once you sit back and get out of the way, like you said earlier, Hamza. What can happen, you know?
Yeah. Your own way. That's right.
Let me ask you, Yvonne, when in the event that people are not walking into that magic shoe store like you did, how could they get in touch with you online? I know you have some properties that I'd like for you to talk about so people keep an eye and probably watch your travels, because I know you do blog a lot about things that are going on with you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I have the website, YvonneO'Brien.com. So that's YvonneObrien.com. I put some blogs or posts on there of things that are quite significant that have happened to me, so that people can understand the same thing can happen to them, or they can understand when those things happen to them what they actually mean. I also keep up with Facebook posting. I also have a Yelp page. Sometimes I put the odd thing on there about events, etc. And that's about it. Those kind of avenues where they can get in touch with me, and they can contact me through the website as well. I generally get back to people within a day or two, depending on what's going on, if you know what I mean. But, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
How long are you going to be in Ireland?
This time, just under 6 weeks. And I think it might extend because I'm trying to write something. I'm not even going to call it a book because I'm being very stubborn about it, if you know what I mean. So I have a few chapters of something written, if you know what I mean. I'm trying to figure out what it is. But I'm being drawn to kind of finish it and get it out there, you know. So I might extend it a little bit further to try to get some of that writing done, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
do you have a voice recorder?
Say it again, sorry?
Do you have a voice recorder?
No, I just have all my journals.
Okay.
I thought actually a couple of times I thought about getting somebody to help me write it, but then I kept going back on. It's the way it's written, not necessarily the content, if you know what I mean. So so I went back to me doing it, and I just need to get up early some mornings, and there's you know, I need to go back over. I had a very caring, loving relationship with the cat that I had some amazing experiences when she crossed over. Sean, I've covered, and a couple other major events. And who knows, this case that has come back up again might end up being something to write about too, you know?
I bring it up because I just finished Paul Selig's audiobook, I Am the Word. And since you are a medium and you channel these energies, that stream of consciousness comes through. You can get through so much content.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
As opposed to, you know. Yeah, just, I mean, even on that flight over, right? It's just like you have all those hours on the plane. You just, it's like a second muscle when you start doing voice recordings. It'll be really interesting. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very good thought because I really believe in what some of the writers say. When you get in the zone, you have to keep going, and it's all about it's almost like you're semi-channeling when you're writing, you know, when it's the way it's coming out of you, and that zone can be very important. When the flow is there, keep going, you know. And if it happens on an airplane, then an audio voice recorder would be perfect, right? You know. And, but yeah, no, I'm very much getting the push to move to get some stuff down on paper because I have a lot of journals, and I think it's worthwhile trying to bring people back to God or trying to give them that oomph in their life if they haven't found it yet, to know that there is a lot more out there that we just don't understand, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yvonne, it was a great pleasure having you.
Thank you very much. I was delighted to be on the podcast. Thank you very much, David and Hamza. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And safe travels to you as well.
Absolutely. And I got to be on, is it Lucky episode number 13? There you go, Superstitious episode.
Well, that's Jesus and 12 disciples, so 13's a good number.
There you go. And that's just like lucky number 13. I have no problem with 13 at all. Okay. Actually, 3s and 7s are my numbers. So, yeah, I'm good. You know what I mean? So thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sure, and you're definitely welcome, and definitely keep us posted. I'm sure you'll have plenty of stories when you get back.
Oh, absolutely. I have a lot to do with missing animals. I'm just about to post something on missing animals and and stuff like that. So, yeah, you'd be surprised at topics, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you both, gentlemen, very, very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and until next time, you guys have been a part of Intrinsic Motivation from a Homie's Perspective. I am Hamza.
And I'm David.
And we'll look forward to seeing you guys on the next podcast. Peace.
Peace out.
Bye.